Well, welcome to the Herb of the Week with me, your host and instructor of the Botanical Medicine Study Course, Stephanie Georgia. Thanks to all who are tuning in and subscribing. I'm so enjoying your comments and emails, and I'm trying to respond quicker, so patience to all who feel neglected. Or better yet, resend your email if you don't feel like you're getting a quick enough response. I'm not a bot, I'm a human. And sometimes things do get lost in the Ethernet. So if you would like a free introductory lesson for the class, I have a link in the program notes to do that. So here we are in May. There's so many wonderful songs about May. There's some lovely Renaissance songs. I used to have this CD of bawdy songs from the English Renaissance. And there was a wonderful one about May on that. Now, I love May mainly because it's one of the best months of the year. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, and everything is new in terms of plants. And the flowers are blooming. Now, flowers are the most amazing aspect of nature, the way they are designed and their purpose. So we're going to continue our May celebration of flowers with this week's Herb of the Week, one of my personal favorites, lavender. I've told my students throughout the year, if you could only plant one herb or have one herb in your medicine cabinet, then it should be lavender. Now, Lavandula angustifolia, which was formerly Lavandula officinalis, is a flowering plant in the family of Laminaceae, which is the mint family. And it's native to the Mediterranean, specifically Spain, France, Italy, and Croatia, which I thought was interesting. Now, commonly grown as an ornamental plant, lavender is a great plant for any garden. It's really hardy, it's drought tolerant, and it attracts pollinators. It's a strong aromatic shrub, and it can grow as high as 2 meters, 6.5 feet. I've never seen this, but hey, what do I know? And the leaves are evergreen, which means even when it's not flowering, it's really pretty to look at. The flowers are described as pinkish purple, which we would also call lavender, and are produced on spikes. And they are anywhere from 1 to 3 inches or 2 to 8 centimeters in length. And they're at the top of very slender leafless stems. So if you grow lavender, you'll notice that the flowers are different on different types of stems than the rest of the leaves. Now, the species name of angustifolia, and folia is the Latin term for leaf. The angustifolia means narrow leaf. And this used to be known as Lavandula officinalis. And as we remember from other videos, officinalis refers to the plant's medicinal properties, meaning it was an official plant in the pharmacopoeia. I'm not sure when the botanical name changed happened, but I think it's interesting and a little bit tragic that the officinalis medical terminology was dropped, but you and I are in the know. Now, lavender has a whole bunch of cultivars, and for those of you who garden quite magnificently will know that anytime you go to your nursery to plant stuff in the spring, there's always a ton of different types of plants, particularly lavender. So pay attention to the Latin binomial if you are buying plants specifically for medicinal use, because you want the angustifolia for that. Other lavenders are used medicinally, but the one that has the most research and traditional use is the angustifolia. And it has been used, there's recordings, written recordings from ancient civilizations of the Phoenicians, Sumerians, Egyptians, Chinese, Indians, Greeks, and Romans. And they all have used this plant for various medical issues. And they also, these civilizations, these ancient civilizations, use their wisdom with lavender for air and household purification. They've used it in their baths and calming, to calm and relax the mind, emotions, and body. And a very interesting medieval use of lavender was during the Black Plague, where they would put lavender in pomanders. And pomanders are those little objects. They can be in the shape of a ball, an orb, or a goblet, or a box, or different things like that. And they would put the lavender inside the pomander for people to sniff, to purify the evil miasms floating about in the air. Now, you and I would look at a miasm as a bacteria or a virus, and they would also use lavender as an incense to purify the room, and was actually quite effective. So lavender has centuries and centuries of use, and it's still used to this day for the same reasons, because it's very effective. Now, the medicinal actions of lavender are as follows, and a lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. Anti-anxiety, obviously, helps reduce anxiety. You use this as aromatherapy, or as an incense, or just to sniff it. It's got anti-inflammatory properties, and this really cool word, antinosusceptive. And what that means, it's a action or process of blocking the detection of painful stimulus by sensory neurons. So what lavender does is it actually blocks the acknowledgement of painful stimuli, which I think is interesting. It has antioxidant properties, which means it's very nutritious. It's antimicrobial, antispasmodic. It's considered a relaxing nervine. It's hypotensive, which means it helps lower blood pressure. And it's also a carminative, which means it helps digestion. Now, the chemical constituents of lavender, here's all these lovely names. And just an aside, which is really interesting, one of the research articles that I came across many years ago, actually, because lavender is so essential to the perfumery industry, which is very lucrative. If anybody's bought designer perfumes, you know what I'm talking about. And if there's money to be made, then things get studied. And what was found was that lavender has 20,000, that's 4 zeros after a 2, different chemical constituents. Now, obviously, some of these are very slight, they're very, very minor, but that is quite amazing to know that in these beautiful little purple pink lavender colored flowers, there are 20,000 different chemical constituents inside of that. That's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Now, the main constituents of lavender are linalool, linaloyl acetate, and you can read the rest of them for yourself. But what lavender is showing by this extensive chemical analysis is that plants don't have single chemicals that do certain things. They have chemicals that work in collaboration. And this is one of the problems with modern pharmacy, that isolates certain chemicals out of certain plants. And they use those isolated chemicals, and then they get all sorts of weird side effects. And that's because nature does not work in isolation, either in ecosystems or within plants. It's a very interesting, beautiful quality of natural things, but it's also something we need to understand deeply as we try to develop medicines based on certain plants. Now, the most commonly used species of lavender, and this really has more to do with essential oils and aromatherapy, because people in essential oil and aromatherapy companies are very specific about certain types of oils. And I'm not trying to make fun of that. I'm just explaining why there are different types of plants, and they will be labeled that way. And they will say, well, if you want to do X, you need to use plant Y. And sometimes certain lavender oils will blend different lavenders. If you're wanting medicinal action that covers pretty much everything, use the Lavandula augustifolia. There's Lavandula latifolia, stoiches, and intermedia. So if you get on any type of essential oil company or directory, or you have a wonderful book that talks about this, they can go into all the different ways that these react differently. But as you can see, there are actually a lot of differences between the flowering aspect of these lavenders and others. The leaves look pretty similar, but the flowers are pretty different. Now, there's many different ways that you can take lavender. You can drink it as a tea. I personally love the flavor of lavender. I actually like the mixture of lavender and like spearmint. And there are a lot of teas, boxed teas in bags that actually do that. It's wonderfully taken as a topical. So you can either have a salve or a cream, and you can get it in a tincture. I've never seen it in pill form. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that I've never seen it. And lavender is most often, to be perfectly honest, most often a topical herb, but it can also be used as an internal. So the best way to do that is with tea or a tincture. Now, the essential oil of lavender is just, I think, magic in a bottle. And it takes acres of lavender flowers to produce a couple pounds of essential oils. And it's obtained through steam distillation. And it produces also, one of the byproducts of steam distillation is a flower water. So the floral waters, if you buy rose water or orange flower water, that's the byproduct of steam distillation. And there are all sorts of urban legends about lavender oil. And one of my favorites involves a chemist for a perfumery company. And he burned his hand doing something that chemists often do when they're not paying attention. And in order to quell this burn, he dunked it in what he thought was a pail of water, but instead it was a pail of lavender oil. And, just a side note to add to the skepticism of this urban legend, I personally fail to understand how a perfumery chemist did not know he had a pail of lavender oil, which is a lot. Maybe his sense of smell was all shot because of so many sniffs of different things. But in any case, the legend goes on to say that his severely burned hands did not blister or show any after effects from the scalding burn that he relieved by dumping his hands into lavender oil. And as a result of this incredible testimonial, lavender essential oil as a skin remedy began its fame. I don't know if this was an Estee Lauder commercial or what it was, but anyways, that's a wonderful urban legend. And I suggest that everyone carry not a pail, but a small 30 ml bottle of lavender oil with them when they travel. It's a great first aid remedy, as well as something lovely to sniff on during regular intervals on long flights. And if it's a 30 ml bottle, you'll get it through security and TSA agents. And because of its antiviral and antimicrobial properties, it's a little bit of a sanitation for the air surrounding your nose. And if you're like me and you always get sick when you fly in airplanes, it's mainly because the air is so dry and it's circulated. Now, since COVID, we've been told that there are all kinds of air filtration on planes. I have no idea if they're doing that now. All I can tell you is that before and after COVID procedures, I always got sick on planes, and during them, I did not get sick. And I was also wearing a mask, and I know that's a very touchy subject with many people, but a combination of wearing a N95 mask as well as sniffing lavender oil. And what I did was I just doused my mask with lavender oil. So it meant I was smelling lavender, which is always very lovely to smell. Now, the highest concentration of oil is found in lavender that is grown at 1,000 feet above sea level. And this, I think, is so interesting because the Laminaceae family that lavender is part of is called the mint family. And the quality of the members of the mint family is that they all have a lot of little cells filled with essential oil in them. And essential oils, particularly from the mint family, are considered as very cooling, which I think is interesting. We often think of the mints as, they're warming. And we often think of mints as cooling, but actually the oils in mints are very warming. And to me, it's just this interesting correlation for lavender that the higher the elevation, the higher the concentration of these warming oils. And so there's this wonderful relationship between the sun and the plants and the healing oils. Now, you need to look at your labels. You know, if these things are grown at the Dead Sea, that's not a very high elevation. In fact, it's negative, it's below sea level. So if you know something's coming from Provence or the Spanish highlands or in Bulgaria, these are the highest qualities of essential oils of lavender. And I'm sure you've seen the French essential oil of lavender from Provence, the Provençal region. And we've all seen those amazing lavender fields from the south of France. You know, they're usually on postcards, and I think there's entire calendars that's all they show is lavender fields, which I personally find very soothing just to look at. And if you want to see them in person in bloom, the best time to do this is in July because they get harvested after that. And nobody told me this teensy bit of really important information. So when I went there to see these lavender fields, I saw lavender spikes of Provence in September. So make sure you arrange your travel schedule to be sometime in June and July. Now, lavender oil is very wonderful for stress reduction. It helps induce sleep. It's wonderful for the skin. And I've never read of or encountered anybody that has a negative reaction to lavender oil, even infants. It's very safe to use straight on the skin. But as with all things that you apply to your skin, you want to do a little bit of a patch test, which means you put a drop on your wrist or on your lower belly. Make sure you don't break out in hives. And if you don't, then it's very safe to use. So it's very good at dealing with acne. You can put a little drop on a pimple and it does wonders to kill the infection as well as heal the skin so that you don't get a scar. It has anti-inflammatory properties. It's very soothing for eczema and dry skin conditions. It heals injured skins. It helps prevent wrinkles. And it's also great as an all-purpose cleaner. You can mix 25 drops of lavender essential oil with 1 cup of water and 1 cup of white vinegar or hydrogen peroxide. And you can add this to an empty spray bottle and spray and use as needed. Now, because I'm an herbalist, I tend to like different sorts of tastes. Where I'm living in Bulgaria, it is famous for its roses, and I'm enjoying all sorts of things like rose juice and rose petal jams and teas. My coworkers think everything that is rose flavored tastes like soap. So take my suggestions with a big, large lump of sugar. I really love the taste of lavender. I cannot describe it other than maybe it tastes a little bit like purple and green, which isn't very descriptive, sorry. In any case, lavender is wonderful in sweet and savory dishes. I have a really fun article link in the program notes, aptly titled, How to Cook with Lavender So Your Food Doesn't Taste Like Soap. So you can guess what that article's about, right? And it's by Chala June. And lavender, she gives all kinds of wonderful ideas. And lavender pairs really well with rich and fatty foods because it cuts through and lifts the overall flavor. And lavender is often paired with chicken, turkey, lamb, and fatty fish like salmon or tuna. And it's part of the herbes de Provençal mixture. So it's in there, and that's what makes it taste so nice. And Provençal is the French name for the province where so much lavender is grown. And it's also called for in many French rabbit recipes. So you can add the crushed dried flowers to things like shortbread or muffins. You can flavor butter with lavender and then use it in either sweet or savory dishes. Another way to really enjoy lavender is by making a simple syrup. Again, a link in the program notes, and you can also add this to your lattes, lemonades, sparkling sodas, and in your cocktails or pour over vanilla or chocolate ice cream. And there are several lavender syrups on the market if you feel like you don't have enough time to make syrup. Now, lavender is an easy plant to grow. It's drought tolerant and very hardy. It's fun to have several varieties of lavender. I used to be a garden docent at the now defunct Copia, the American Center for Food, Wine, and the Arts in Napa, California. They had an entire garden filled with different types of lavender, and it was so fragrant, and the bees and butterflies were really happy there. Now, I want to give a disclaimer. It didn't close because I was there. In fact, it closed after I left, much to my deep grief and chagrin. Now, I have a link to a website on how to grow lavender in your garden. You can have lavender grow in container gardens. You can put them in separate pots or plant them directly in the ground. Now, there's many herb farms that have lavender festivals in the summer. So check out your local events calendar for updates. Because I'm from California and I've lived all up and down the west coast of North America, I can tell you there are always lavender farms somewhere having some sort of lavender festival, and they're really, really fun. So check it out. Lavender is also well suited to air drying, and it doesn't have a huge chance of growing moldy. And will your kitchen or wherever you hang it is going to look so cool with bunches of lavender flowers drying from the rafters. And it's also going to smell amazing. Now, caution, you do not want to dry them in front of a big window because the sunlight will evaporate the essential oils from the flowers. You can hang the lavender bundles upside down in a dry, well-ventilated area. Now, for those of you who don't want to show off your wonderful lavender bundles, you can put them in a warm, dry place like a closet, which will make all your clothes smell really nice, or in an attic. But make sure there's good air circulation to prevent mold or mildew. And it takes about 2 to 4 weeks or until the flowers feel dry and brittle to the touch. And that's when you can sprinkle them into certain things to make them taste delicious. Now, if you're wanting to make a tincture, you can use the fresh flowers for that, no problem. So however you want to enjoy this versatile herb in a garden or a dish or through teas or essential oils, Lavender is an herb you will want in your kitchen spice cabinet as well as your medicine chest. So this is Stephanie Georgiev saying thanks so much for spending your valuable time with me. And again, if you would like a free introductory lesson for the botanical medicine study course, online course, I have a link in the program notes, and I hope you can enjoy some lavender this May. So until next time, be well.